Hello, my name is Celso, and this is my quick review of Adobe Substance 3D Modeler from a character artist's point of view. So before getting started, it's worth mentioning that this software is in beta right now, in open beta, so anybody can try it. All you need is an Adobe account. And because it's in beta, I decided to make this video with the hopes that the developers actually see it, and maybe they add a couple of things that I would love to have, so I can incorporate this into my character workflow. Um, okay, let's start with a very good positive. So the interface, the controllers are look very flat, very non-intrusive, and I really like that. And the menus are very simple, very sober, very professional. They actually manage to fit everything you need within a single hold of a button. When you hold like this little hammer on your left hand or your support hand, because if you're left-handed would be your opposite hand, so let's call it support hand. If you hold that button on your support hands, you have pretty much all the menus you're going to find in the software. And by default is your tool menu. If you joystick to the right uh, on your working hand, then you get a little bit more of an actions menu, so layers and resolution and symmetry and all that. So very easy to find anything you need. Huge positive. Yeah, I just got medium running for us to take a look on the difference of the interface. Uh, one menu, two menus, three menus, four menus, and then I got a fifth menu when selecting something. So five different combinations of buttons so you can access everything. And when comparing to Adobe Modeler, is one single hold of a button and you have everything you need there. So if I if you look when I look around, I don't know if you can see there, but there is this bounding box here, and it is pretty big, right? Like this is the starting point, so it is pretty big. But sometimes you're making a giant thing, and it always gets low when you get closer to the borders, but you cannot keep modeling past this point. And the more resolution you have, so if you increase the resolution, this bounding box actually shrinks a little bit. So sometimes you start modeling something and you run out of space, which is very annoying. And that's not the case with Substance Smaller. Substance Smaller, it has an infinite canvas. And here we go, right? Like there is no limitation. You can keep zooming out. When you get too far from the center, you're gonna see some. The brush is not gonna behave the same, especially if you go too fast. So if I actually zoom in and ooh, yeah, it kind of froze for a second there. If you actually zoom in and go more precise, you get your controls back. But if you're too far and like zoomed out and far from the center of the scene, you're gonna see some weird stuff happening with the brush. But again, this is huge, right? Because when I start, like this is the actual scale of my scene. Uh, but if I take it easy here, yeah, if I'm not that zoomed out, I don't have that problem. I think the problem with the shifting cursor is more like if you're at this distance. Yeah, let's talk about layers. So if I get my clay tool here and I just do a quick sculpt and I go to my layer menu and create a new layer. And let's say, yeah, a new layer. You can just go into scope and start selecting things and moving them around, or just grabbing without selecting. I have something else selected, but uh, things still moving. I can select a couple things and group them. So now when I move one, the group moves instead of each individual object. So it's pretty simple, pretty easy to work with. Uh, but I really miss having two things that Medium has. And let's jump into Medium and see what those things are. So if I make like an object like this, you see my layers again? Okay, so select it, duplicate that layer, move it down, and then just gonna create. Um, so add scope layer, and this one, let's make like a little hand-looking thing. Yay. Okay, so this is one layer, this is one layer, this is one layer. I can select either on the viewport or on the outliner there on the layer stack and see what's what here. And on top of that, there is another thing I can do is I can parent those things. So I can see that my hand is that layer and my forearm is the top layer. So if I hold the hand and drop there, it parents those two layers, and I can do the same with the forearm on my with the actual arm. So now if I move the arm, the whole arm moves, and then if I move the forearm, the hands go with it, and it's almost like a little rig, and that makes it so much easier to pose something. That makes your life so much easier when posing. And there's lots of functionalities for this that would be great to have. So having an outliner just to organize your file and have a more professional file, being able to hide things on the outliner, on the layer stack, or whatever you want to call this, it's huge. I really wish that Modeler had it. I know it's a matter of time and they will get it because this is not going to be a professional tool without a layer stack, without an outliner. Um, and again, naming things in VR, it's a pain, but Modeler has the desktop part of it too, right? So you can do the cool stuff in VR and actually use your keyboard and mouse for naming and organizing the file. So you have an easier time when working. And yeah, I really wish that the modeler already had those two things: layer stack and um parenting layers. Okay, now to the last thing that Medium has that I wish Modeler had, and that's that little yellow guy over there, the camera. So I understand Modeler is not a like Adobe has the Adobe Stager for um, setting up cameras and lights and everything, but let's be honest, like this camera is not for presentation like that. It's for presentation of workflow, and I think Adobe would benefit a lot from people sharing more of how they make stuff, and having a physical camera that they can place makes it way easier for people to watch. And there's two ways I use this camera. One is let me just figure out here how to get it again. I haven't used it in a while. So if I get here, video and mm, desktop preview. The main thing that I like about this is a stationary camera, even if the avatar wasn't there, right? But it's a stationary camera that I can place. Let's say even like almost beside me, GeoNapco does this a lot, where he places the camera here, and you can watch his avatar sculpting. And for people who get motion sick with all the head movements, this is great. And this is actually like watching somebody else sculpt in real life, right? Like you're seeing uh, you're not seeing through their eyes, you're seeing what they're doing as they're doing. And this might benefit you more on the learning side of it, because you can see the hand gestures, and you can see how every, like how they're looking, how they're positioning their body, right? uh, I think that there's a lot to be learned by having the camera in a third person view. And the thing that I like the most about this is you can actually, as you place the camera, you can actually position on the same spot as a physical camera if you have a green screen, and make it look like you're like having your physical body sculpted in VR through the green screen, because you lined up the 3D camera with the VR camera, with the real camera. And that just blows people's minds. It's so really cool. And I wish I could do that. So it's not much about the results. It's more about the making of and the tutorial side of things, right? Like, just makes things way more interesting. I don't think any VR application has that. So let's look at good old ZBrush. And there is two brushes in specific here that I think would benefit a lot. Uh, the pinch brush is the major one that I miss having in any VR sculpting application, and I don't think you would need to generate voxels, or I wouldn't mind if it does, but if it's just pushing existing geometry around, that would be fine too. But it's so much easier to find edges, to get different like add some plane changes when you can pinch some geometry, when you can add a corner easily like this just by with brush strokes. And I wouldn't mind if it was just on the pen side of things too, because yeah, the desktop version is actually pretty cool as well. So I would definitely not mind if something like this didn't work as well on the. I don't see a reason not to, but yeah, a brush like this would make a huge difference to have in a VR application. I think it's one thing that's missing, and there's another brush that complements this quite a lot. Here it's called Trim Dynamic. I don't think we need something to this extent, and this brush not always works the best, but there is one thing that one way I get one workaround that I use sometimes when I want something similar to this, and it is using a smooth brush, really strong, with the focal shift very small. So just like really digging in there and flattening areas with the smooth, not with the clay tube. So that would be a good thing to have. Actually, this is two things on the smooth brush. Being able to adjust the inner radius, so the focal shift or the softness of the border of the smooth brush, like ZBrush has, and like Mahler has on the other tools, right? Like on the Move tool and on the color painting tool. So this already exists on the software. Would be great if we could have a focal shift adjustment, the softness adjustment on, so we could have on the smooth brush, so we could have a hard smooth and on top of that. And when I go up in resolution a little bit, this smooth I find that this smooth brush is not strong enough. So you can see the different size of squares. There's very tinier squares on my last one. So I think if I scope out, I can sculpt on any of the tools, of the layers, I mean. Let's try that with just a smooth. So on the smooth here, I can control the size of the smooth, I can control uh, the intensity, the strength here, but I don't have a softness option, right? Um, so that's what I'm talking about. One brush that does have that is the color brush here. So you see there how there is two circles now. Um, and if I do left and right on my thumbstick, I get the softness there. So let me just pick another color here. So if I'm painting, I get like a airbrush feel, or I can have a pretty hard, and it's more like a solid color feel. And I would love to see something like that for this smooth brush. So I can do a hard smooth or a soft smooth. And on top of that, of course, a stronger smooth brush, because uh, you see here, like on the default resolution, this smooth brush works quite well. Let me just make sure I'm on max resolution here. Max, uh, not max resolution, max strength. So it's at 100% right now, and 100% works great for smoothing things on the default resolution. But if you increase the resolution a little bit, you're already in trouble, right? Like it takes forever to smooth this down. Um, and if I could have that way stronger setting, like either amplify this somehow, have the intensity automatically go up with resolution, but that might be a bad thing too. I don't know. Uh, I think having giving us the option. So this one, I increased the resolution 4 times in comparison to the original one, and it's like just doesn't go anywhere, right? Like I'm holding the trigger here, and it takes forever for me to smooth this down. Um, I can see a reason to do things that way. I would definitely decrease the intensity if I want to preserve the volumes more. But let's. It would be great to have the option to make this brush stronger than what 100% strength is right now. That's all. So the spline tool, I really like how you control it, being able to move things from one side to another, inflating or deflating. All that's great. I see myself using this way more as a single stamp than as a brush. But again, like because with the single stamp you can really get like very organic uh, wrinkles and things like that, right? Like I see lots of potential use for this. The one suggestion that I would have for this tool would be not be part of the clay tool, be its own category here. That way we could have all different kinds of profiles for uh, this shape, right? Like right now it's a circular profile. Um, I would I would really prefer if we had the option to have like a square spline, right? Or a triangular profile for this, like this, but with the tapering and everything that you get from the spline, that would be awesome. So I think the tool is great. I just want more from it, as we always do, right? All right, so the last item on my long wish list is having a way to load references inside Modeler. And by reference, I mean images. Uh, right now, there is a way to import. Uh, there we go. Yeah, right now there is a way to import uh, 3D meshes here. I don't see any way of importing images. And again, references is something that we all need as artists. Um, There is a workaround, at least for people using Oculus. I'm pretty sure other headsets have something similar. And what I do is just I press my Oculus Home button. I get a desktop thing here. I bring my monitor on with, and I have all those references open on my monitor already. And then I pin this screen here. So when I go back to the software, to modeler, it's there. So it's good. They made improvements. Right now, my geometry occludes the screen, so it's how I expect it to behave. I think even weeks ago, I don't think I ever tried this with Moller specifically, but on other apps, anything that I put in front of the screen would be blocking. Would This would be translucent, and I would see more of my reference than the geometry here. The way it is, I don't mind, so I don't think it's an urgent request. But again, I would love to have the ability of putting lots of tiny little references surrounding my workspace here and being able to use those as I please. The workaround is good enough for now. I'm pretty sure this is a feature that they will
So
have to
this one
add
is a
at some
little
point.
bit. I don't think everybody would miss having this feature, but I really like having the ability of controlling the roughness of the shaders, so I can make like a more reflective or less reflective material. Uh, in this case, particularly, I'm missing this feature because I really like drawing a sketch in VR before I start sculpting. So for the drawing to look a little bit more like a drawing, removing, like just increasing the roughness to remove any specular reflection, really does the trick and makes it this process feel a lot better. But again, like I know it's not something that everybody would use. But with that too, right? Like sometimes it's good not only colors uh, for you to be able to control, like having tight speculars or a more reflective or less reflective material might help you differentiate between objects in your scene. So I think that would be a good add. Another alternative to that would be just having, similar to what ZBrush does, having a library of materials of matcaps or however they decided to do it. Uh, that's the yeah having in that case would be good to have like flat material, metallic, reflective, rough, right? Like you or standard or whatever, right? Like you get doesn't need to be huge, right? Like you just I think 5 materials would be enough. Like you can cover a lot of ground with that. Just something that's more reflective, something that's less, and so on and so forth. Sculpting in VR has always been amazing for me. Being able to really see things in 3 dimension as you're making your 3 dimensional objects is, yeah, it's another level. Like it's another feel, and most of all, I think it's the most flow state I get. You know, when you're sculpting in a flat screen, you have more distractions surrounding you. I know you can do that here too, but yeah, I think I'm deep in when I'm sculpting in VR, but that's overall VR, right? But all that being said, Adobe Substance 3D Modeler is the best VR sculpting I ever experienced. So yeah, that says a lot. Even when there's like they haven't implemented everything that they're planning on yet, they haven't implemented everything that I wish they had. Still, like it feels by far the best experience that I ever had in VR. One thing that was upsetting me a little bit when I was recording this time lapse was the inconsistent size of the brushes. And by that I mean every single tool has its own size adjustment. So let's say if I'm working with the move brush, or warp tool or whatever it's called. If I'm working with that one and I have like really big because I'm changing a big area, and I hold the trigger for this smooth brush, I get a very tiny smooth brush that I was using like 5 minutes ago, and then I adjust the size for that. And then let's say I go really to a close up and I start using a build up tool to sculpt a specific tiny area, and then I hold the trigger uh, for my smooth brush, and the smooth brush is huge because that's how I used last, and so I have to adjust the size for it again. Or even if I decide, like if I'm zoomed in and I decide to use uh, my move brush on that specific scenario, right? Like just doing some fine adjustments with the move tool. Uh, Again, it's going to be huge because the last time I used was zoomed out, moving the entire object. So yeah, it's cool having the ability. It would be better if you could choose if the size is going to be remembered per tool or in general. I myself prefer if it's in general, because usually if I'm adjusting a brush really small, it's because I'm gonna be working on a close-up, working on a tiny area, so I'm gonna need all the tools to represent that. So I think the desktop part of it really sets this tool apart from every VR sculpting tool that I used before. Being able to file manage it and type things and everything that's horrible to do in VR, being able to use mouse and keyboard for kudos to the Substance team. This was great. The sculpting part of the desktop portion of this app could be a bit better. It feels a little slow. I think part of why it feels slow is because by the time I get to the pen that I feel like I need the pen to work on this, I already merged all the tools, and I'm using it to smooth the lines between things and doing some build up here and there, and more precision modeling, sculpting. So that feels like I can't help but all the time that I was doing that I was feeling like I should just export this to ZBrush. So right now the desktop part doesn't prevent me from switching apps yet, but I can see improving to that point in the near future for sure.